So my name is Talha. I actually run the Zoho Advisor program for accountants. And so what that primarily does is provide resources to accountants who are interested in finance products. Now, just a little bit of background about why Zoho Finance and a little bit about the industry and why Zoho is actually going in this direction. So it's actually, Zoho Finance applications are actually the second fastest growing product line at Zoho. Of course, you probably know that CRM is the big dog, but hopefully not for long. We have a 67% year-over-year growth rate, and there's a good reason why. And that reason is because small businesses are really flocking to the cloud, specifically for finance applications. So just some general graphs to make me seem a little bit more legitimate. 68% of businesses use an average of at least 4 apps on the cloud. Of course, you all are here. More than likely, you're using one of those applications in the cloud. SMBs need significant help with finance management, as reported in some recent surveys. Now, one of the things about finance apps is that the reason you all are here is because you have to be, not because I'm the best presenter at Zoho. Nobody wants to deal with Zoho Finance or finance apps in general, but if you have a strong finance system that's integrated with your sales and marketing, that's integrated with each other in terms of having inventory integrated with books and subscriptions, it makes life a whole lot easier, and these sessions can go on faster. So what are small businesses doing if you don't have an integrated system? And typically what small businesses do is that they go to some type of app store for their current app. There's a few of our competitors listed up there. We keep them small so they don't get too mad. But what you're going to do is you're going to have hundreds of apps to choose from. If you want to do inventory, what integrates with my current system? Is it going to be robust enough? Is it a two-way integration, right? These are all questions that start popping up, and we don't know all the answers to them. So we got to go through help guides, and sometimes we just dive in, and it just doesn't work. So what we figured out is that we need a suite of finance apps. You can't just have invoicing. You can't just have one of the pieces. You got to have the entire system to have it make sense. Now, if you were to choose one of those integration apps, or God forbid, the integration isn't there, you might go to one of these kind of interim developers that are going to help you connect those apps, right? So a lot of you may know about Zapier. They have some great stuff, but it's just not ideal. Specifically for finance, you really want a system that you know is going to stand up to updates, is going to stand up to changes in the system, right? You don't want it to break on you. 44% of SMBs feel there are just too many apps. Now, I know Zoho has a plethora of apps, right? When you go to Zoho.com, it's kind of like getting punched in the face. But when you look at the individual suites that are there, right? There's some separation with these really thin lines. We try to help make that a little bit more digestible. So the finance apps are there to help you say, all right, now I'm going to run my business, but I need to make sure I have my books in the correct order. So these are the functions you need. These are the apps you need. So the Zoho apps are there to provide you with that operating system for business mantra that we've been promoting for so long. Now, Zoho Finance Plus, as I said earlier, you can use any of the apps individually, or you can use them integrated into a system. And we'll go through the different functionality of the apps. So let's explore Zoho Finance Plus. Now, what the Finance Suite currently contains, if you were to go to Zoho.com and scroll down to our small section, is Zoho Invoice, which is an invoicing system that many of you know about that integrates with Zoho CRM. Books, which is our full-blown accounting system. If you guys know about QuickBooks Online or Xero, this is toe-to-toe with them. We have many more features in terms on the automation side, but it's a strong component of what you'll be using in Finance Plus. We also have Zoho Expense, which is an expense management system. Again, we'll get into what each of these mean. The names are really easy to recognize, so if you're unsure of what they are, just read the name. We also have subscriptions and then inventory. Inventory is actually a little bit of a misnomer. I know I just told you to read the names, but inventory has a nice sophisticated inventory categorization system, but really think of it as sales order management, right? It'll create a workflow that you can follow from generating that sales order to having that item delivered, including shipment in between. Now let's talk a little bit about Zoho Invoice. So it's a pretty simple application that is designed to be able to generate invoices quickly, send those out to customers, and accept online payments. Right? So this is also something Zoho Books does, but we'll talk about some of the differences between the two apps in just a second. Now, a nice graphic just shows a few of the features of Zoho Invoice, maybe a little small. So the second one you see there is time tracking. Now this time tracking is going to be if you are generating invoices that are time-based, right? If I'm a freelancer, I'm an accountant, I'm a consultant, I want to log time. You can do that from your mobile app, start a timer. There's a Chrome extension to do that as well. So if you're on the computer, you don't have to log into Books directly. You can start timers and then generate invoices from those. Accept online payments. That's a really big reason people go to Invoice, right? You can always find an invoicing program, but do they have enough of the integrations you need to accept those payments? We'll talk about which ones Zoho Invoice has. Now, some of the cool functions you've been hearing all yesterday and today have probably been centered around this idea of automation, right? The more you automate, the easier life becomes. And that idea definitely carries over into the finance apps. So there's going to be some cool if-then statements you can generate to help you categorize things like bank transactions, to help you automatically set up notifications to different members of your team, notifications to customers. Now, just a quick view. I just wanted to show you, I didn't want to go into the product and kind of move my mouse around. Sometimes it's a little hard to follow, but I wanted to show you a little bit about what the apps look like and show you a common theme between them. Really, when you're running an accounting system, right, it's something you need. What you want to see first isn't what's happening all the time. You want to see the exceptions, the things that you need to take care of. So the dashboard is designed to really quickly highlight those invoices that might be overdue. How is our overall health really quickly? So it's just a quick glance. And on the left-hand navigation panel, you'll see you just kind of move down, and this is going to be consistent across the finance apps. So again, it's not as big of a deal, but having a consistent flow between the different finance applications helps you to get into them faster and to actually have the ability to not waste time in the learning curve aspect. Now, just some basic stuff. When you're generating a new invoice in Zoho Invoice, you're going to be able to do that here. If you integrate it into CRM, which we'll talk about at the end, you can actually generate that invoice there in CRM and have that available here as well. So as you can see, pretty quick and easy. You don't have a lot to navigate through to do it. You can add a new customer directly into the invoice or through the contact profile. Now, a couple things that are kind of neat, and I kind of want you to focus on the bottom half of the screen here. So if you look at, there's some customizations for this customer that I can list. One of those is a price list. So the cool thing about a price list is if you have any customers that might have unique prices that are special to them, you can set up a price list that actually sorts out those products or services. And so anytime an invoice or a sales order is generated, it's going to reflect those prices. That can also be done in different currencies. So this application, as well as Books, is multi-currency. But if you don't want to have to actually have just a currency conversion on the invoice, you want to have custom or fully listed numbers, you can do that using a price list. You'll also see the portal at the bottom. So when you enable the client portal, that's something that's actually consistent across the finance apps that gives customers access to their own data, right? So they can go in, they can view a history of their invoices, they can make payments, they can generate a statement. You can even allow them to see some of the time logged on the timesheet module for projects that might be open for them. You can also disable that if you don't want them to see those. And then lastly, you can actually change the portal language into about 10 or 11 different languages that we have available. So you can have your customer viewing their portal and invoices in a different language than your program is. Adding item details, again, very straightforward. You're going to notice that this is the same across the different applications. So again, that idea of a short learning curve, going to CRM, being able to do this, or going into Books or inventory, it's all going to look very, very similar. Now, after you actually generate an invoice, what's going to happen is it's going to pop up a customized email template. So you go ahead and email that directly to the client. You can customize this however you want. Now, let's say the client is brand new, right? We haven't actually set up a client portal for them. What they can actually do is when they click on the View Invoice button, however you want to generate this, right? You can make it more beautiful. What will happen is they'll see an instance of that invoice. So they can actually accept, if it's a quote, they can accept it. They can make a payment, a partial payment. And on the actual invoice, you can specify which payment gateways you want to be able to accept, right? So if you have a certain a certain invoice that you don't want it paid by credit card, you only want e-check, you can go ahead and enable that so that they only see those options. Customers can then pay online. This is an instance of that portal. So again, you can see this specific invoice had both PayPal and credit card enabled, and they can go ahead and enter their details. Now, the benefit about entering their credit card details through this portal is that it's all secure and encrypted, and you don't have to worry about where that data is being stored or managed. That's all something that Zoho will worry about for you. And then, of course, you can receive those online payments. This is a list of some of the payment gateways on the left-hand side. Some of them support, as I said, e-checks. Some of them also support recurring payments. So if you want to set up recurring invoices, you can do so as well. And then what you'll notice is when they go ahead and make that payment through the portal, it'll actually notify you inside of the product and mark that invoice as paid. So that means accounts receivable gets hit, right? You don't have to follow and go back and make sure that that application actually has, that invoice has that payment marked. Now, of course, reports are a big part of any application, and the finance reports are very robust. You also have the ability now, which is in a recent integration, to create customized reports using Zoho Reports. So a lot of you guys know about Zoho Reports through CRM. There's an integration with that application here. You can actually generate those customized reports. It's quite a robust integration. Definitely has some requirements that you'll have to get familiar with, but the abilities are quite extensive once you get into it. Now, Zoho Books. We actually kind of already talked all about Zoho Books, but I'll go over it really quickly to kind of remind you. So it is a full accounting program, and it's going to have your accounts receivable side as well as your payable side. There is a basic inventory management program inside of Zoho Books on the professional edition. And what you can do is you can manage those services or products you have, you can track inventory, and you can also be notified when you're low on stock to reorder. Now, when you think of, why would Zoho Books have inventory if we have a program called Zoho Inventory? So think of Zoho Books as being that central application that has all the nuts and bolts of what you need. And when you want to expand individual functionality, go to an application like Zoho Inventory, go to an application like Zoho Subscriptions or Expense, and you'll be able to do that. It's much more efficient to do that rather than create one bloated program. A couple things about Zoho Books before we quickly move on. Inventory tracking, as the gentleman mentioned. Automate your banking. So as you get those bank feeds coming in automatically from your account, in the US, I've yet to run into a decent sized institution that's not listed. Even a credit union I use locally with 2 branches can get their transactions imported automatically into Books. So that's usually not a problem. You can set up bank rules to help you categorize those transactions. That is going to be for those transactions that occur regularly. There's some criteria in there that you can recognize. The banking function in Zoho Books is actually quite robust. What you can do is, when I'm viewing my transactions that have come in, when I click on any of those transactions, let's say it's a receivable, right? Something that was deposited, it'll try to bring up the most closely associated invoice or sales order that was paid to that amount. If that wasn't paid or that's not available, you can go ahead and generate it manually from there. But the idea is to not have to move through too many screens and the system to recognize that for you. Just a quick look at Zoho Books, very, very similar to Zoho Invoice, but it does include this handy drop-down for purchases that you didn't see in Zoho Invoice. That's going to include not just expenses, but also purchase orders and bills. A handy thing that you might not all have this applicable in your business, but let's say you generate sales orders and then you purchase your products after that. You can convert those sales orders into purchase orders in Books, which is nice. If in the items menu, in terms of your inventory, if you have the purchase prices listed there, it'll actually just switch those prices for you so you don't have to recreate a purchase order and send it to your vendor from there. Matching transactions on the banking side, this is what I mentioned earlier. This is just a really brief example. Let's say I was to go into my bank account in Zoho Books. I see that there are 3 uncategorized transactions. And when I go ahead and select one of those transactions, it'll then show me the most closely associated payment that I received. I can just go ahead and hit match, and that'll be done with that. On the following page after this, I'm not sure I have listed in this slide, but you can reconcile your transactions for your account as well at the end of the period and go ahead and make sure that all of those have been accounted for. Now, reports in Zoho Books get more in depth than they did in Invoice. You do have the ability to get a whole bunch of payable reports as well. You'll notice one thing about inventory is that Zoho Books uses first in, first out. That's something to keep note of. Zoho Inventory also utilizes that, and just something to make sure that you remember. So Zoho Expense is a expense management system similar to what you guys have probably utilized in larger companies where you have employees submitting expense reports. Now, there's some really cool functionality on the mobile side for this application and some cool integrations that are to be made note of. One thing is that Zoho Expense integrates with QuickBooks Online. It's our only finance app that has that ability, but if you have someone who's trying to move into the finance side, or you're currently using QuickBooks Online, but you want to start using the Zoho Expense system that integrates with CRM, you can do that here. Now, this program is actually free for up to 3 users. The only thing you don't get on the free edition is the ability to generate approvals or have those reports submitted for approval. What you can do on the standard edition, which is $15 for 10 users, it's by far the most aggressive pricing in the market, is actually set up the entire approval process. So you can set up policies that are enforced. The mobile app lets you take pictures of receipts and it'll auto scan the name of the merchant, the date, and the amount. And then you can generate an expense from there. Every Zoho employee here has to use that app whenever they travel. And you have to submit your expense reports. Whenever I go to Vegas, I always get asked why I bought that $35 burger. And I say because it was the cheapest burger I found. But those types of things can be submitted in Zoho Expense. But you can set up policies that can prevent those types of things from occurring as well. So that's a big part of Zoho Expense. Of course, the receipt scanning side is another big portion. So a couple more things to keep note of in Zoho Expense are the ability to set up personal and corporate cards here. So I have my corporate card in my Zoho Expense account. I also have my personal card there in case I have any transactions that need to be reimbursed. I can go ahead and just associate those transactions. The exact same way we saw the banking module in Zoho Books is how you categorize expense transactions in Zoho Expense. Makes it a lot easier to include those transactions in your expense reports that are submitted, and then you have that verification where I don't have to print out my Amex statement and go back and see which receipts I had, because I have a receipt inbox that I'm simply matching up to those transactions. This is the dashboard for the desktop version or the browser version, and it's going to look a little bit different whether you're an approver or you're just someone who is submitting. But you'll notice that very similar to the other finance applications, very similar to move around in as well. Now, this is the mobile app, which primarily is the one that I use. I don't really go too much into the browser-based app because all of the receipts I have, I just took pictures of. And most of the time, I want to submit those as quickly and pain-free as possible. So in the submitter view, let's say I have a report that I'm submitting. It'll have the total amount there, and then I can go ahead and submit that. And then on the approver view, they're going to be able to see how many expenses are there, what the history behind those are, if there's any questions I have. As an approver, I can go ahead and ask those per line item. My boss will do that on frequent occasion and ask me why this expense is there. So I'll be able to go back and say, this is the one that you asked me to do. And then he'll go ahead and finally hit report approved. And then you can initiate the process who that goes to after that, right? If there's a secondary approver, if there's HR that needs to get it, someone else that needs to pay out, they'll get that access. Now, Zoho Inventory. This is a really big program. And it does a lot. As I said earlier, you really want to think of this as a sales order management system, right? So you have sales orders that come in, either they're manually generated, or you can use one of the e-commerce integrations that we have. We have a direct connect to Shopify, and we also have some marketplace integrations with Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. So if you sell online through any of those platforms, you can actually use Zoho Inventory to have those sales orders generated. Quick story about Zoho Inventory. I give a lot of webinars on the different finance apps, and I really wanted to test out the functionality of this program. So what I did was I wanted to see how the marketplace integration works. So I used my old eBay account that I haven't logged into in a long time. There was a stress ball on my desk, took a picture of it, put it on Zoho Inventory for 1 cent for a no reserve auction for 7 days. Figured out that the item was posted. It also brought it into my inventory. Now, the other thing that the marketplace integration does with Zoho Inventory is that it keeps your stock levels equal. So if you're selling, let's say, offline, you want to make sure that you update the stock levels online or vice versa. So you have those equivalent across your systems. You're not overselling or underselling. And so in that story, I posted that stress ball, gave the presentation, saw the customer's information come in, totally forgot about that stress ball. 7 days later, it was sold to someone in Maryland for 37 cents, free shipping. Cost me $6 to send it to her, but I got a webinar out of it, so it worked out. It was a free stress ball I got at a trade show, and it had another company's name on it, so not sure why she bought that. And the reason I know it was a she was because her customer information that came in as a customer in eBay was actually downloaded into Zoho Inventory, and then I have my CRM integration set up there. So now I still have her contact information. If I want to reach out to her with more stress balls and say, hey, I got a new order in, I can do that now. And a lot of times it's difficult to do if you're strictly on eBay. Some of the other features inside of Zoho Inventory, a couple things I just wanted to take note of. Multi-warehouse management is available in Zoho Inventory. Really, really awesome feature that was hotly requested. Finally got that in. In addition to that, you have the ability to set up item groups, right? So let's say I sell something that has different sizes, but they're all categorized under one option. Let's say there's Zoho t-shirts, and I want to have small, medium, large, different quantities, maybe different prices. I can set up item groups that help you to have one item with those differences listed beneath that. Now this all ties back into Zoho Books as well, where I'm able to have those items show up in both of those programs. So if I generate a sales order in Zoho Books, it's actually going to reduce that stock from both of those levels. Now, a couple more things about inventory or some of the integrations. A lot of you have questions about the shipping carriers. Now, these are just a few of the many carriers we have. There's a lot of international carriers listed there. So what happens is, and well, I'll show you this on the next screen. As I said, inventory is really a sales order management system, so you can move from having a sales order to a package that's created, that's shipped, having a shipping label generated, and finally tracking that until delivery. There's also a question about tracking numbers being generated and updated automatically. You can set up templates where that's updated to the client automatically. Those tracking numbers, if you're going to use a shopping cart like Shopify or a marketplace here, it's actually going to upload that information back up to that shopping cart or that marketplace so that you can update them in multiple areas. Now, as far as the shopping carts at the bottom of the screen, those are connected through cloud connectors. It's a third-party connection, but you can still have those shopping carts like BigCommerce, WooCommerce, Magento, and PrestaShop. But we have a direct connect into Shopify for Zoho Inventory. Now, just a quick view. I know it's kind of small. I just wanted to show you a little bit about having item groups. So there are actually different sizes here for this particular shirt or blouse. And you can see the different reorder amounts maybe listed at the bottom. So just wanted to show you a little bit of what that looks like. Another thing I wanted to show you is that if I was going to move through the process, a little bit of what it would look like. Right? So the first part is that I need a sales order. That sales order is either going to be generated manually by someone in the organization or automatically through the marketplace or the shopping cart integration. So you have that sales order. Now what do we do with it? The sales order, if it's confirmed, you can go ahead and move that to a packaging stage. So you'll be able to hit create and then move that to a package. You'll also notice that the sales order number will then go through the system here. Now on the next screen, it's going to give me a pick list, and then on the following screen, it'll have a packing slip that I can insert into the package with contents. And so now I can go ahead and actually choose, let's say in the pick list, this is coming from the sales order. Let's say I have I'm out of the second item listed here. You'll get a notification in inventory that says on back order, right? You can go ahead and move that to 0 and continue on. So you can deliver part of the order if necessary. That'll then be partially invoiced as a sales order. Now, finally, I have this kind of full view. I can view which of my items are in the packaging stage, which are shipped, which are delivered. So I can go ahead and actually view that item. Now in the next stage, I'm going to go ahead and ship it. So I can ship it manually, or I can ship it via one of those carriers. If I have a FedEx or a UPS account, what I do is I just log in. I put in the dimensions on the next page. It's going to say what type are you using, a standard box from FedEx, or you have custom dimensions, and it's going to fetch the rates immediately there. So you can go ahead and print that shipping label, slap it on the box. You don't have to go to your FedEx account to do that at that time. So that's what you do with the carriers. Again, helps to eliminate one of those extra steps. So really you're trying to move your entire sales order management system into one login with Zoho Inventory. Now finally, it's going to be in the ship stage. Now at that level, it's also going to have a tracking number that's going to be generated, right? In this case, it was FedEx. So I can set up my emails to automatically send out that notification at each level to my customer, right? Because I have their information, even if they're a customer from Amazon or eBay, I'll have their information. I can send out those automatic emails myself. As I said, it's also going to update that information back onto that system. So when I have each stage transferred, right? So it's moved to the shipping stage, send out that email. It's now been shipped. I can go and it's now been delivered. I can actually see that status there. It'll automatically mark that as delivered, and then all of that will then transfer to the delivery stage. Really helps to know this information inside of your inventory management system so that your customer doesn't have to reach out to you and say, hey, it was supposed to be delivered, why wasn't it delivered? You can just go in, you have all the information you need here. Finally, you can see that same sales order is moving across the stage to its last destination, which is delivered. Now, the last product in the Zoho Finance Suite is Zoho Subscriptions. This is a really interesting program because a lot of businesses are moving to the subscription model, but it's kind of also in this gray area where there's not really an entire demand for this product, but we felt at Zoho that we should go ahead and include this as part of Finance Plus for those businesses that are looking to begin moving to that system without having to have an additional cost. Now, Zoho Subscriptions has some really robust features. As I said earlier, Zoho Books actually has the nuts and bolts of pretty much everything in the Finance Suite. So you do have the ability to generate recurring invoices in Zoho Books, but there is some limitations to that, such as the ability to generate plans. So in Zoho Books, if you're going to create a recurring invoice, it's going to be the same invoice, it's going to be repeated, and you can pick the how often that's going to be charged, and you can even store the credit card numbers. But in Zoho Subscriptions, what you can do is you can set up different plans. The same way that you buy Zoho products on subscription, there'll be different editions. There's even different trial periods. You can have one-time costs associated to it. And then, of course, metrics that aren't available in the other programs. So these are some of the metrics that we'll mention in just a second. So you can also manage payment failures, which is a big part of the system, right? The biggest burden on subscription businesses is managing payments that don't go through. So having a system that can automate that, having a system that can recognize expiring payment information before it occurs, notify the client automatically, is much more robust than a system that's going to go through and actually experience those payment failures. Some of the other really robust features, one thing I want to list or talk about for a second is hosted pages. So Zoho Subscriptions hosted pages are basically a self-sign-up page for your clients. So what you can do is you can go into subscriptions, and let's say I have a plan. We'll do this in just a sec, but let's say I have a plan for the way Zoho Books is set up. And I actually want to list that on my website, or I want to have a link that I can send to my client or put on social media that they can go ahead and sign up on their own. So what I can do with hosted pages is actually have that set up so they can input their information and actually enroll themselves into the subscription plan without having to have any human contact in that whole process. So subscription can really be used as an automated program. So you know that there's a few things in subscription management that are different than are typically done in accounting systems in general. Accounting in general is backwards looking, right? You need to know what happened and you need to reconcile and find out if there was a payment that didn't occur, there's something missing, how we can go forward. In subscriptions, you really want to look forward, right? We have this recurring revenue. How much recurring revenue do we have, right? How many signups do we average over a period of time? And how many cancellations do we average, right? These are all metrics that Zoho Subscriptions will give you. You'll also see things like not just monthly, but also annual recurring revenue. What's our lifetime value per user? Right, these are all metrics that you want to know what's occurring in. Typical accounting systems don't include them. And then, of course, it's integrated with Zoho Books. And then if you have any type of custom subscriptions you'd like to set up, all of the Zoho Finance apps, but subscriptions in particular have powerful REST APIs that you can call into. And there's all documentation about how to do that, even through Zoho Creator. Just a really quick look into the app. I just wanted to show you a really basic start of just one plan, right? So think of how you're going to generate a subscription as kind of this this upside down pyramid. So the base is a plan, a product, and on top of that product you have plans, right? So think of Zoho Books as a product, and then the plans you have are basic, standard, and professional. So you can replicate that in your system as well. And so in each of those plans, I can have certain details like what the costs are per month. I can set up a fee here that may be applicable to only certain plans, a trial period that might be there, whether it auto-renews until canceled or it's going to go on for a specified period of time. And then what you're also going to get to choose are things like add-ons and coupon codes that you can generate. So add-ons, let's say this is just an imaginary plan. Let's say it was for some ABC software, and they charge for a QuickBooks migration. So one of the add-ons could be, it's only available on the professional plan, but for a certain amount of money, they can purchase either it's a one-time add-on or recurring add-on. So you have all this functionality built in. You can even generate coupons with coupon codes that can be redeemed on the hosted pages. So you can set up permissions as far as how many redemptions can occur for this coupon before it expires, how long it goes on for before it expires. So you really get a lot of functionality on that level that you don't typically get on a basic accounting system. Now this all ties back into Zoho Books and CRM. So how it ties back into Zoho Books are going to be those individual invoices every time the subscription is charged or renewed. That's going to go into Zoho Books. You can then reconcile that with the payment that you received through the online payment gateway. And then you have all your systems equalized, where in CRM, if I'm viewing this customer, I'll actually see which subscriptions they're signed up for, which ones they've canceled, that sort of thing. And a little bit about Zoho Finance Plus that's different than using the integrations individually or using the applications individually is similar to those who have used CRM Plus. So there's actually an admin panel where I can go ahead and assign seats and users to different products. So I can do that from a singular page. I don't have to go to each individual app. Again, this is very similar to those who have seen CRM Plus. And I can also assign, their role that's been created from this admin panel as well. So it helps you save the step of going into each app and having to choose that information.